This isn't even the late night panel, so don't worry.
You were just playing with a monkey's tail. What? Those with sick minds are working overtime. Okay. What time are we getting? Oh, we're 5 minutes behind. Awesome! Okay, well, first, let me say real quick, after this, because my God, there's a lot of you. After this, we actually do have autograph signings. One floor below, there's going to be able to sign this as like the Walker autographs and stuff. So we're going to do that after this panel. We're also going to do it after the Q&A panel. So if you have a question or something you want signed or want a picture or something like that, don't stop here, head downstairs, and make that a cluttered mess, and that'll be wonderful. So this is a panel about comedy, about what works in comedy, what doesn't work, if even such a thing exists. Whatever he's doing behind me does not work. Because I'm not doing it. But so pretty much we're just going to go down the line real fast, just introduce ourselves and what we do. I am Doug Walker. I have a website called IGotTheGlasses.com. I do a lot of characters such as Dominic the Bartender and Chester A. Bum, Ask That Guy, and probably the best known as Nostalgia Critic. Applaud!
No, I'm Welshie, I do horror reviews. I'm now leaving the site, so it's going to be my last con, so yeah, bit of sweet. Follow that. Mike? I'm Ben at the Stage. I do anime reviews, and later on Saturday I'll have my own 18 plus panel. Hope to see you all there. Yeah. Hello.
Thank you. I'm Mike J. I do shameful sequels obviously on the same websites. Informationalism and Hang on a Second, Silent Seeker. And just when I think of something funny, I'll record it and, see if people watch it.
Hello and welcome! I'm Phil Gray and I do Bad Movie Down and Protector and whatever stuff really. I think that all I really do. Lord.
Okay, so like I said, we're just going to sort of talk about comedy here and what made people consider it funny. And the first thing to understand about comedy specifically with humor is that comedy and even the act of laughing is all based on misery. Like, everything. I know it sounds sick, like that makes us sick people. But really what it is when we get down to it, it's a defense mechanism. It's a way of taking bad stuff that happens to us in life and finding a way to laugh at it. It's a way of coping with it. So that when, you see a person get hurt on a cartoon or something like that, well, people are getting hurt in real life, but you know what? It's our way of coping with it, having fun with it. It's a way of just moving on. Because if we have bad stuff just totally bog us down and not make us do anything, we'll do exactly that. We'll never do anything. So laughing is a great way of making people feel better. That's what we're here to do as comedians. With that said, who here knows technically, like actually surveyed this stuff, technically what the funniest joke ever is? No?
Not credit cards!
I know it's not bad credit card. The Irate Gamer Show. Yes! The Irate Gamer. He has the funniest joke. Okay, I'll tell what is technically, like I said, just reports down the funniest joke ever. Two hunters are in the woods. One accidentally shoots the other one. He panics and he calls 911. He says, help, I shot my best friend in a hunting accident and I think he's dead, but I'm not sure. And the operator says, okay, you have to go and make sure he's actually dead. So the guy goes, shoots him in the head, says, okay, now what? Now, in my opinion, that's not a bad joke. That's a pretty decent joke. But who here is still laughing, still going, oh my God, no, you're not. But very few people would actually be like crying tears of laughter. It's, because it's that funny. So that's the important thing about comedy is that it's all subjective. What could be funny to me could totally not be funny to you. I mean, we all do various forms of humor up here, And, somebody could hate me and love Film Brain. Somebody could like Mike J and like, Welchie. Nobody likes Bennett, but...
You guys hate Bennett!
Yay!
I don't need your pity!
So it's all subjective, and there is no exact right or wrong when it comes to comedy. There's no book there's no comedy dictionary that this is funny, this is not. You cannot laugh at this or you'll get thrown in jail. It simply doesn't work that way. It's all going to be, we all come from different environments and different backgrounds, and we're just going to find different things funny. We're going to talk about the different types that are funny here. What a lot of people react to when they say something is funny and something is not is what hits a large group of people. And that doesn't necessarily mean, again, it's going to make you laugh. Well, because everybody laughs, you have to laugh at it. No, you don't have to laugh at anything you don't want to. Or you can laugh at something when people say you can't laugh at that. It's always going to be subjective. Oh, yes.
One of the biggest points that I make about, well, actually I don't make about it, but made about comedy is the fact that a joke separates an audience. There are people who will get it, there will be people who won't get it, and there will be people who get it but don't think it's funny. And that's why there is a theory passed around, like those Christmas crackers you get around evening time, those lame jokes. Those are intentionally lame so that everyone is on the same side. They all hate that joke in the cracker so no one feels left out. There is a sort of community to bad jokes. That's why so many people are latched on to puns, for example.
And we will definitely talk about puns too. Like I said, we're going to go through all sorts of different kinds of comedy. And same thing, guys, anything I'm saying, I literally just brought it in like, you want to be in the panel? You know funny. So anything that's like, oh hey, I got something to say, yeah, just always raise a hand and we'll go right into that. Now, what we were talking about with misery, and all humor being based on misery, no, it's not, come on, all humor is all lighthearted, and all that stuff. And take that joke we all laughed at a second ago with the hunter, he goes and shoots him, okay, now what? Do you know how much therapy that guy's gonna have to go through now? Do you know how his life is just destroyed by killing his best friend that was possibly still alive and destroyed the one chance, and who knows, maybe he'll go and commit suicide another time in his life or something like that, and maybe his family be destroyed by that, and they'll go and commit suicide, and it just destroys his whole long life. It is a sick fucking thing! But we still laugh at it. And that's just part of it. It's taking something that is probably originally meant to hurt us and turning it into something positive. So that is what we're trying to get across here.
And by extension, something like non-jokes, which would begin like a joke, but ends on something that logically would follow, but is not funny, but therefore is funny. Something like, your mom is so fat that she has a higher risk for diabetes. Sad, true, but still a joke.
But not like this, it's building it up like it's gonna be funny. And all questions, by the way, we'll take at the end here. Because I do want to hear your guys' thoughts on stuff too. What's that? Yeah, questions, comments, all that stuff. No, we'll do questions, but no comments! Can't think anything about us! So my personal, one of the major, most important things about comedy is reactions. We pretty much make videos just based on our reactions to stuff, to bad movies and whatever we're reviewing. And there's a bunch of different kind of reactions, but I find there's sort of a main three that are a lot of spin-offs. So right now, I need someone who voluntarily wants to hurt me. Okay, you seem pretty generous. Okay, there's not much, was it?
She has a crowbar.
Put that back. Let me move this back too. Okay, there's not too much room here, but I'll do my best. Okay, so these are going to be three different kind of reactions, and the first one you're going to see is a sort of cause and effect. What you think is going to happen. So when I say go, what you're going to do, you're going to swing your arm back, and you're going to go pow on the side of my head. Now you're not going to hit too hard, but just enough to make it look like there's an impact. So this is a very simple, basic cause and effect here, right?
Knock him out!
I said knock you out! Now that is a very simple simple, basic cause and effect. I could make it funnier, but there's not much room here. But okay, so that simple cause and effect. Something happens, there's a reaction to it, and that's it. Now the next one is called the delayed reaction. This is where it happens, but maybe it doesn't happen exactly how you think it's going to happen. Maybe it's a little delayed. So we're going to do the exact same thing. When I say go, you just do boom. You can even do a little faster if you want. Make it look like an accident. Okay. Gotta keep that, you know. All right, ready? Go. Okay, you actually ruined my third demonstration. but I can do it. Hold on.
This is what we call an improv yes-anding.
Okay, so we'll try it one more time just to get without the improvisation. That was very funny, by the way. It was good. But right now, yeah, just do the exact same thing you did before. You ready? Do it again. Okay. Go. Now that is the delayed reaction, where you know something's going to happen, but it doesn't happen right away, and you delayed it a little bit. Now the third one, final one here, is just the out of left field one, where something's going to happen, but then you deliver something totally different you just didn't see it coming. So again, when I say go, you're going to reach your hand really far back. You're just going to go boom on the side of the hip. You got to reach really far back for this one. All right, you ready? All right, hold on. Go. Was it jumper? Yeah. Big hand for everybody. Now, of course, there's a lot. If there are only 3 reactions and that's it, comedy would be very limited. There are other ones, but there seem to be sort of variations and spin-offs of those 3. So the cause and effect, cause and delayed effect, and then just something totally out of left field, just something you did not see coming at all.
Another rule of comedy that isn't so physical is something that I like to call isolation exaggeration. If you're looking at some subject and you can spot something that you find to be pretty humorous, but you isolate it from the context from what that subject is, and then exaggerate it, you can have a pretty good laugh. For instance, if someone asked me to, let's say, review Pokemon, I would say, okay, then my nickname for Ash Ketchum would probably be Michael Vick, because he keeps making animals fight. See?
Unlike some big fans, obviously.
No, I'm guessing we're too far from Philly.
But, exactly. So now with that said, with what you just saw, let's talk a little bit about slapstick. Slapstick is very physical humor. This is stuff like Tom and Jerry or the Three Stooges. Evil Dead does some of this stuff too. You got any examples there too? Was it?
Qualton.
Yeah!
Fish slapping dance.
Home Alone.
Oh yeah, Home Alone.
Home Alone.
Mike J's question mark. Very fun. But yeah, so pretty much this is the very physical humor. Somebody gets hurt, but even that has an art to it. There has to be a way to do it right. And usually the best way to do it is that the more content the person can be before the violence happens, usually the funniest. Tom and Jerry is a great example of this. How many times have you seen where Tom thinks he has the advantage, and maybe Jerry's going to act like he's going to punch him, and Tom goes, and he has that totally smug grin of, go ahead, try it. And of course, something somehow is going to smack him, but he has to keep that reaction until it actually hits him, and then his world comes crumbling down. And that's usually what makes it the funniest. And usually, with humor in general, fastest is usually the best. There can be good slow humor, but it is more difficult. Usually just the faster you're throwing it out and the less time you have to react to it, usually the funnier it is because you're just so not expecting it. It's out of your comfort zone. So slapstick is very, very good at that kind of stuff where it just the more it can be physically solid and really hurt them. If you see a cartoon where something like an anvil falls on a person, but the person like really stretches out and goes, whoa, that's not as funny, but it looks really solid when it comes down, and maybe they can just stretch a little bit, but it still feels physical, it still feels solid. That's where you're gonna get the really, really good comedy. So again, just the more painful it can be, and the more content the character can be before the pain happens, the funnier. Or the other one, like in Home Alone, you were talking about, like, before the bucket hits Daniel Stern, Joe Pesci says, look out, and Daniel Stern goes, huh? And it hits him in the face. And, and even there, he's just questioning it, but it's still such an innocent face, and you know that the more it's gonna smash him out of that innocence, the funnier it's gonna be. So, that's sort of the quick crash course, no pun intended, of slapstick there.
It's the realistic sounds as well, isn't it?
What's that?
You say realistic sounds make a difference, because they say that in The Simpsons. They do bone-crunching sound effects when Homer gets hurt, because it's funny.
That's true. The other thing about, Graham's a good point, sound effects in slapstick, because again, there's some sound effects we hear a lot in cartoons, like boing, boing, boom, and the softer sound effects are not going to sound as funny, or the goofier ones, but the more solid ones, like the sound effects are going to sound really funny. A boing, that's not going to sound funny because it doesn't sound as solid. Which, by the way, something, and Jim Davis has said this too, is that anything usually with like a K sound or a C sound is usually hilarious. And something he brought up, he said, lettuce is not funny. Cabbage is hilarious. Case in point. My cabbages!
There's actually a theory about why the K sound sounds funnier. It's because in order to make a K sound, you have to smile.
Oh, good thing. I think too, just anything that has K sound, everybody! Again, just anything that's more aggressive, just anything that takes you out of your comfort zone, usually is going to lean towards funnier. I mean, there are some exceptions, but usually that's the funnier bit. And we are going to have a bit on shock humor, so we will go into that as well.
Oh, really?
Yes. Well, yeah, just start getting yourself ready there.
Mike will be okay with that. He seems to disturb her.
We'll continue that in a moment.
Let's confirm that.
Okay, and so another form of comedy you guys probably see a lot is sort of like the situational comedy, or the sitcom, or the variety shows and stuff like that. And this is something where these are like the Frasers or the IT Crowds and stuff like that. Just shows where it's like, hey, here's a situation, here's how they react to the situation. So for a lot of reaction. And you've seen the kind of stuff before. The two I'm going to hone in most specifically on. Actually, this is really weird the more I think about it, because usually when I talk about this, I'm in America, and I talk about British comedy is so much better, but now I'm going to talk about how much American comedy is better. No. It's a joke! See, and you laugh, so it worked. Okay, two very different kinds of humor trying to do the same thing. Saturday Night Live and Monty Python. Two very, very different, and what they seem to be, they're both variety show, they're both sketch comedy, but one focuses very much on a goofy person in a serious setting, that's SNL, and Monty Python is very much a serious person in a goofy setting. Now, I like Monty Python a little better because it's not as expected, and you can't get as much of a formula, and you gotta get more creative. With Saturday Night Live, you'll have whatever, like a Chris Farley character or a John Belushi character come into the real world, and the real world is reacting to how crazy they are, or the Marx Brothers, and I love Saturday Night Live, I love Marx Brothers, but we've seen this before, or the straight person going, I'm upset, no. Where Monty Python will take something that's like, they'll talk dead serious about the trials of being a mouse. That was not a matter of wanting to be a mouse, you just wake up one day and realize that's what you want to be. And the interviewer is just taking it all in, yes, and then what happened? Okay, so you started having cheese around. I admit it, I tried a bit, but I wasn't happy about it. And it's just how serious they'll take something that's so goofy. But now with the situational comedy, part of the fun is that you can mix it up a bit. Like, you guys see Third Rock from the Sun, right? One of the great joys about Third Rock from the Sun is that you have the crazy character, you have the aliens in it, but the straight folk, the people that are supposed to be reacting to it, are actually just as crazy when you really look at it, because the joke is that you think they're going to act really insulted and really hurt, but half the time they're in on it. And that's great because that still acknowledges just how crazy humanity is. So you have these aliens coming down, you're laughing how goofy they are, but then you also laugh at, hey, these people are getting in on it also, because aren't we as humans also very, very goofy? So that kind of stuff can also play in well too. So the more you can kind of, there is usually a formula, but the more you can play with the formula, the more you can just take something out of left field that someone didn't see coming, usually the funnier it's going to be. With that said, we got, okay, we got satire. And I want to talk specifically about good satire and bad satire. I'm going to talk about bad satire first. Matthew, what's the name of that really bad Twilight you were talking about?
Breaking Wind.
Oh.
Breaking Wind.
Now, why was this not a good satire?
Well, it wasn't a good satire because instead of actually satirising many of the numerous things that you can take part about Twilight, like the fact that it's really kind of this strange, abusive relationship, and there's like a whole bunch of characters that don't make any sense, and all that, it just goes right in favour of the fart jokes. Fart jokes, fart jokes, fart jokes, oh, sex jokes, oh, random nude person. That's not satire, that's not actually contributing or commenting on the material like it should be, or like a good parody or a satire should be. That's just, oh, we couldn't think of anything to do. Lowest common denominator, fart, 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 fart. That's bad. Family Guy, yeah.
Do not downplay the necessity of a well-timed fart joke, my friend.
Well, we actually will get into that too. But I'm talking about bad satire, and what we sort of talked about, I think they're sort of called now like the movie movies. How many people have seen disaster movies? You all grown, oh, you know these are bad, bad films, and they're all satires. And there used to be a time when satires were like the top of comedy, stuff like Spaceballs or Mel Brooks films. And these newer ones not. And a big part of it is that the Zucker brothers and Mel Brooks, they knew that a lot of people say you have to like what you're satirizing. I don't think that's true. I think you have to have a passion for what you're satirizing and an understanding of what you're satirizing. And clearly Mel Brooks enjoyed or had a passion for Star Wars when he did Spaceballs and Frankenstein. And clearly the Zucker brothers really enjoyed or had a passion for Rambo or Top Gun or the movies that they satirized. So there has to at least be a very basic understanding. The people that did the movies, from what I've heard, I'm sure you guys have heard it too, would get notes from the movies being made at the time so that they could have it come out around the same time or maybe a week or two after Pirates of the Caribbean came out. They would have epic movie. Oh, hey, there's a Jack Sparrow looking character, so obviously they're satirizing it and they must do it well because it kind of looks like him from that movie. And then when you go do it, hey, this has nothing to do with that damn movie. So they're going into that not having a passion or an understanding for what they're satirizing. And satire works the best when you understand it. Weird Al Yankovic. You all know Weird Al Yankovic.
Yeah.
Now, there's somebody who he'll take... Did you really shake your head no? You don't know who Weird Al Yankovic is? You got some homework. Hey, now, there will be plenty of stones you can throw at her afterwards. Yeah, now I'll get revenge for you hitting me. See, it all comes full circle. Yeah. That's comedy. Okay, but so pretty much, but Weird Al, he does satire songs, if you don't know. He'll take something that was like really serious, like somebody singing about, you know, gangster paradise, what it's like to grow up in the ghetto and how difficult it is and stuff. He'll make it about the Amish and make it because it kind of sounds like, you know, this other word, or, you know, instead of bad, it'll be fat. And again, instead of about gangs and stuff, it'll be about him eating too much. You know, even just satirizing words, you know, turning it into something else, he still has a passion for what he's satirizing, where the movies obviously don't because they couldn't even see the movies. And the reason they did that is because you would see this character, oh, well, I see that character, and I know that must be like, you know, Frankenstein and Spaceballs and stuff, so it must be like that. And then you go in, they have your money already, so it doesn't matter, they can give you crap, as long as you bought the ticket and went in there. So, satire and parody works best when you have at least a passion for it.
Another thing as well that I've always felt is that if you look at films like Naked Gun, like Airplane, like the old really good spoofs, Hot Shots, they cast them really well in terms of they hired professional actors. Leslie Nielsen before Airplane, he was known as a very serious actor. Bob Stack from Airplane, very serious, and they played it straight, and that's what made it funny. Whereas if you look at the films now, like the movies, they're constantly hamming it up and looking at the camera and winking at the camera. It's just like, and that's not funny because you can see they're just chewing scenery, and it doesn't work. And that's why films like Airplane and Hot Shots and Naked Gun work, is because it's played completely straight. And the joke is the situation that's going on around them, not them.
Exactly, and again, they have the passion, they have the understanding, and when they play it serious, when the funny thing happens to them, it's all the more funny. And again, like you said, if you're focusing more on just being silly and goofy, well, that's not as funny as the situation is.
Well, a lot of those older movies like Airplane or Naked Gun, Airplane and Naked Gun, they looked at disaster movies and detective genres, and they covered genres, they covered actual proper genres. If you look at the new spoof movies, they don't actually cover the genres, they cover all sorts of genres in the time frame. Like Epic movie doesn't actually cover epic movies. I don't consider Pirates of the Caribbean to be an epic movie. I don't think not a traditional epic movie. You think, when I think of epic movie, you think Ben-Hur or something like that, but they're not parodying that. They just think, oh, epic movie, let's just put as many things in as possible. The most recent Scary Movie, Scary Movie 5, they reshot great chunks of that movie to include more topical parody. So they reshot most of the film so it was about Mama. They added an Evil Dead parody in there before it even came out, just off the Red Band trailer. It's basically trading in topicality for instead of actual jokes and actual criticism. And oh, sorry. One last thing.
I'm gonna let you finish.
Just let me finish, man. Just let me finish.
I'm gonna let you finish.
All right. There's a perfect example of this in Epic movie where there's a really quick joke about how he's doing a Sudoku puzzle in piss, and when I was doing the review, I was like, oh wait, that was a thing in 2006. No one remembers that anymore. So you will go watch these movies in about 10 years, and they're really like time capsule. And just goes, wow, that was a thing back then.
And that behavior goes back even further to like Scary Movie 2, when David Cross's wheelchair goes flying out of control, and then the camera zooms in to the wheels and it says Firestone. How many people remember when Firestone tires crapped out on American vehicles? Nobody! And that was the joke! Ha 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 ha! And not only that, but remember that scene where the basketball would just dribble down the steps and then they just parodied that commercial that just happened 2 months ago? Timely!
That does bring up a good point too, is that when you're doing humor, try your best to make it timeless, which is not to say that situational humor isn't good. Again, Saturday Night Live did that all the time, Daily Show does all the time, but the more you can sort of make it timeless, the more people will look back and watch it and enjoy it years later. So if you're gonna do it with, timely, that's fine, but mix it up a bit, if you really want it to last. Speaking of Daily Show, you were saying lowest form of humor, fart jokes and stuff. Actually, what's considered by many to be the lowest form of humor, the next one we're going to talk about is puns. I strongly disagree. I love puns. But the thing about puns is that there's good puns and there's bad puns. And the bad puns are really bad. The ones I usually think of, I know a lot of people disagree with me, is the Flintstones. I love what Family Guy did with the Flintstones. It's like, hey, you want to go to the rock restaurant in my rock car from our rock house? Rock, yeah. And that's the puns, and I'm just like, it never did much for me. But for those thinking that, there's no such thing as good puns, clearly you haven't seen Simpsons and you haven't seen The Daily Show. Because every single time you look at a building in The Simpsons or a sign, there's always a pun under it, and it's always funny. And Daily Show, half the time the little caption they have on the right as he's saying the story sometimes can be so funny that he can't even get the story out because people are laughing so hard at that caption.
A lot of people don't get Daily Show here, so that reference.
It's
really?
Yeah.
For a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's on. Well, for those that don't know, I mean, like during the
That's a good one for that.
Oh, Wallace and Gromit does a lot of puns? Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, they sure have some good puns in there. Yeah, I mean, so you'll see that it's a play on words, and the best play on words, again, usually ties into the situation. Again, I'll use Daily Show just as an example. During the whole Clinton scandal with Monica Lewinsky, something was going on where he was like trying to talk about a war somewhere else, and the Daily Show would call it perversion diversion, and they would have the Washington Monument like just up like this. But that's fine because that's taking something that, you know, to, I'm sure, Mr. Clinton and his family and everything, this is a very serious topic, but they'll take it and sort of turn it into a joke. So again, the more it ties into the situation, the funnier. That's why Daily Show got away with that so much better, because they're taking something that's supposed to be serious, make a joke out of it. Simpsons could do it funny because it's a name of a place like a funeral home or something like that, and there'll still be a pun after it because they're still trying to sell it. You know, it's mocking the fact that it's still trying to advertise and market something, and they don't care at any cost what it is as long as it's memorable.
Like my favorite Simpsons sign, Sneed, Speed and Seed, formerly Chucks. Wait for it. Wait a minute, his name was Chucks. Oh.
So I think there's a lot of good puns out there, but like anything, people can rely on them too much and they can get really old, and yeah, a lot of words can sound like other words. But again, Weird Al, I think, did a very good job taking words that sound like other words and just making a whole love song about them. Yeah, or YouTube, you can look it up.
Well, as a purveyor of bad puns, as many of my friends will attest, I would like to say, either with puns, you can actually, there can be times where a pun can be so bad it can actually circle back round on itself and become funny again. You know, unfortunately, I can't think of any examples right now because there's some people in front of me.
Common Mockery on Whose Line Is It Anyway was great with puns. But that was because he worked for the puns. Like, it was so clever, like the way that he would.
It'd be a long build-up too.
There would be a long build-up, like, if I remember the pun correctly. Forgive me. All right. News today outside of the Playboy Mansion when a group of monks set up shop, a florist shop, outside of his mansion. Hugh Hefner called the authorities to have them evacuated, so it appears that only Hugh can prevent florist fryers.
That is a program. I heard to let you go, oh, but at the same time, like, there was such build-up to it, there was such work for it, that you can't help but laugh at it, and that's what you're talking about before with, like, a joke that's so bad, but you kind of can't help but laugh at it because it's so forced. And there can be humor that's just so forced, you can't help but get a laugh out of it. With that said, another big humor I'm sure a lot of you guys love talking about, looking up weird and silly. Just straight up weird and silly. This is Ren and Stimpy. This is YouTube poop. This is half the stuff that's on Adult Swim.
Sad Panda.
Sad Panda. Another great example. You know, it's just stuff that is so strange and so weird, and you're laughing at, and you don't know why half the time. But you just can't help it. It's so strange, and it's hard. Those are really difficult to do consistently. Because it relies on stuff coming out of left field. Well, if you keep having stuff come out of left field, you're going to start to see it coming. So it's difficult to keep it going, but it can happen. I think Sad Panda does it very well. I think Ren and Stimpy, for the most part, did very well. And usually, it still has to have some basis in reality. Or My Python does it very well. It has to have some basis in reality, and they have to be going about a certain path, and then you just bring something that nobody saw coming in there. You know, again, with like, you know, what we did before with her hitting me, and then the last one, you know, smack her back. But if she suddenly turned into a banana, that'd be even stranger. And nobody would see it coming. So it's hard to say exactly what it is about that stuff that gets us giggling, because it's just going to be different for everybody. It's very rare that stuff can catch on really big, but there are some. We were just talking about, wasn't the He-Man What's Going On video. What's going on? People laugh our asses off all the time, man. Actually, Cali Bear, he had a shirt the other day that just had Skeletor going, yeah! Hey, come on, we're not here to do... Yeah, I was gonna say, we're not here to do Linkara impressions, okay. So that one I don't have a ton to say because it's so hard to talk about why those are so funny. It's gonna be different for every person. But just the more out of left field, the more you can make it look like you're in a situation that's a common situation. Just throw something totally out of nowhere. The funnier. Actually, even the He-Man one is good. It starts off as like the He-Man cartoon, maybe with just a few words changed around. The guy's doing a bit of a different voice, you know. I had a secret powers revealed to me when I held off my magic sword and said, and you think like me, the satire is just going to go like another minute, like the opening, and just, he breaks into the song. And it's not even like, you know, it's like this, and said, 20 dollars. I mean, just from there, you're like, what the hell is going on? What's going on? And it just gets such a laugh, and the fact that it keeps going, and it's still, it's like, wait, he holds aloft his sword and he says this every time? I mean, like, how does this work? So just the more it can take you out of that, the more you can set up a reality and then totally go against it, usually the funnier that kind of humor can work.
Now it's time for cake! No, you were going to go into shock humor, I believe?
Yes, after one more. Okay. Next one here we got gross out humor. Now this kind of humor, I'll be honest, I'm usually not a fan of, because it's like, ooh, for me it's more physical, because that implies more pain. But it's just, ew, that's gross. It's like, well, okay. You know, so it doesn't do that much for me usually. But for some people, it's like, that's enough. It's the taboo, it's the stuff you're not supposed to talk about poo-poo and pee-pee, ha-ha. Oh, let me give one example here. Is that, but the one that always gets me, and this is where I say, okay, there has to be some gross out humor that's really funny, is in Dumb and Dumber, when he takes the laxative, and he's on the toilet. And, well, first of all, the build-up is wonderful, because he's driving, all of a sudden you just hear, and he keeps driving, and then he gets to the place, and he hears it again. And he looks for the bathroom, and he finds it, he gets out of there, his legs fly up into the air, this explosion comes out of his ass, his mouth is wide open, he just goes, but what works for me on that one is, again, that he's going through so much pain, both pain and delight at the same time, because he was slipped so much. So again, I think it comes back to that pain for me. So the more you can sort of tie it into some sort of pain, usually the funnier.
Another example of that I find very strong is Jackass 3. It's incredibly funny, but part of the humor from it doesn't come so much from what you're seeing. It's all when you're seeing with an audience, especially, you can latch onto the feelings of disgust and shock and humor at the same time. I saw the movie in a theater, and I've never seen a funnier movie in my life than seeing Jackass 3 with the audience that I saw it with, because there was a couple right in front of me, and the woman was not having this. She was on